Hello and welcome to Chess Please, and today I'm going to tell you about 3 traps that you can use that still work at 2000 ELO in chess. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to distinguish between tricks and traps, and there is a distinction in chess. A trick is something I would have talked about before, where you play a bad move in the hope that your opponent misses something about the position. I would have talked about this in a video I made about playing dirty. So you see in this game, I'm playing as black, I'm down 2 knights, and all is pretty much lost, and I play a little trick. It's kind of a desperate move where I launch a check on this king, and I'm hoping that they also miss that I'm attacking their queen at the same time. So that is a bad move. If they just take my queen, the game is over. But the thing is, the game was kind of over already anyway. So I play a trick. It's a dirty trick in some people's mind, but a trick nonetheless. We capture their queen and they resign because they missed that we were attacking them. That's not what I'm talking about today. Today I'm talking about a trap, or 3 traps, I should say. And traps are different because traps are genuinely good moves that you can play, that within that move there is a path your opponent can walk down that leads you to win material or get a better position. But if they play correctly against a trap, it basically means they don't fall into the trap, but it doesn't mean you're sunk. It's not like the trick where if they spotted the queen was being attacked that they could have taken back. A trap is a little safer, it's a little better, but tricks have their place. They're a desperate ploy of a lost man. So the first trap I'm going to tell you about, I don't actually know if this has a name or not. I haven't really seen this talked about too much. I'm going to call it the Havoc Wreaker, and this is a trap you can play in the Sicilian defense. So we're playing a standard game here of the Sicilian, and I'll get us into the position of the trap because it's a pretty standard one. And particularly if you play this version of the Sicilian, the E6 Sicilian, which is what I play, I highly recommend it. It's super light on theory, and you can kind of get yourself into this trappy position pretty early on. So the position you want for this havoc wreaking trap is as follows. So you want the bishop, their bishop, pinning your knight, and again this knight is very often going to be here. You want that, behind that knight you want your dark square bishop, and you want the queen backing up that dark square bishop. Other things you want are this pawn here, their e pawn on e4, their knight here on c3, and their queen there on d1. That sounds like a load of things need to go right, but actually in the Sicilian most of this is going to be happening anyway. That's going to be happening, that's going to be happening, that's going to be happening. So really the only additional things are bishop pinning the knight, which happens very frequently, blocking that pin with the bishop and the queen backing up. When that happens, you're able to uncork a bit of dynamite, and it looks a little complicated at first, but the move is, so they castled there, and our move is taking that pawn on e4. And it looks really dangerous, but dangerous for both of us. It's an incredibly sharp position. Now, a couple of different things that can happen. They can take with the knight here, in which case we take the bishop. If they take with that knight, we take the bishop, or we take the knight with our queen. And we're up a pawn. We're up the pawn that this knight took in the first place. And that's all we're going to win in this trap, but winning a pawn in the center and trading off a bunch of material is going to give you a huge advantage. And again, at 2000 ELO, or in the 1900s when I was playing this, and I still do play this, that's a huge advantage. Getting into an end game with a pawn up is a huge trap that you want to set. So what happens if they play, otherwise if they take the bishop, which I believe they do here, they take the bishop, and then they're attacking your queen, so you think, oh, you got to respond to that. You do, but not in the way you might think. You capture their knight there on c3, and then you're hitting their queen, they're hitting your queen. So it's all a bit pugnacious at this stage. They capture your queen, you capture their queen, and now they have a decision to make. They can capture your knight, or they can get their bishop to safety, but they can't do both. So in this case, they capture the knight, we capture their bishop. Yes, we give up the right to castle, but the queens are off the board, so that doesn't actually mean as much that your king is kind of stuck in the center of the board, because there's less danger without queen. So being in the center isn't as exposed and dangerous, because there's a lot less material to checkmate the king in the middle of the board. And now after that trap, we are up a pawn. If you do the tally there, we have 7 pawns, they have 6, and we have the exact same amount of material. And then you can kind of park your king here, you can get your bishop out here, get your rooks over here onto the queen side, and you're just up a pawn. As I say, it's maybe not something to write home about in paper, 1 pawn up, but 1 pawn up, all that material traded off, you're absolutely laughing. And this comes up so often, I will say. Here's another version where I play it actually a little wrong, but because it's kind of a weird move, I don't recommend playing it wrong. So the difference here is they have a knight here on f3, which means you can't play it, because we have all the other things that we see. We've got the knight, we've got the bishop, we've got the pawn, we've got the knight, and not that pawn, we've got the queen here. So it looks like we should be able to do it, and we do it, but our opponent should have spotted that if they bring this knight over here, then they have enough defenders for this bishop, so we can't actually take here anymore. So we've actually just given up a knight for a pawn. Thankfully, our opponent doesn't see it because it's such a havoc wreaker, and we're able to execute it as normal. But they had an out there. So one last final example, and again, a little bit of a quirk on this is we get into our position where we have all the things we need. We've got bang, 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 all of that. They make a good move in here in terms of defending this bishop, which again, for the same reason as the knight being here, means we can't really do it. But a little quirk we threw in here, we just kick the bishop out, which is a very common motif here. Sometimes they'll take, sometimes they'll drop back. If they drop back, we're back in business because now that's not being defended. And you actually kind of guarantee that they have to take here, which lets you carry on with your havoc wreaking. They trade off knights for some reason. Again, more material traded off. We take their queen. They get their bishop out of dodge. We get our knight out of dodge. They put it under a bit of pressure. We just trade it off. We just get another bishop out of there. And when the dust is all settled, we actually get castled in this version. Their bishop is a little offside, but again, all this comes to is we are up a pawn and a huge amount of material off the board. So that is the havoc wreaker. If there is a proper name for it, I'm all ears. Moving on to our second trap, and this is one I've covered quite a lot on the channel, but this is the repetoire gambit. So if you are playing as the white pieces against the Caro-kann, again, a favorite opening for a lot of people who play with the black pieces. And this is what I play against it, regardless of this trap. So again, this is a trap in the sense that if they play it correctly, we're not sunk, we're not in trouble here. And this is what I play, where I actually offer them up this pawn here. So again, that's not necessarily the gambit as yet, because we could take back. The gambit that I play here is this, the repetoire gambit, where you offer up this pawn. And if they take that pawn, yeah, like the computer says to take it, so it's not like a disaster, or they're not immediately sunk, but it leads to some possible very early checkmates, if not a very fun game. And I've covered this in a little more detail. So they take that pawn, we take back with the knight, and like that can be the gambit in and of itself, where we just have given up a pawn for a bit of extra development. But it can go a little further wrong here. We bring our bishop out, and they bring their bishop out here. So again, they're leaving this bishop staring at this pawn and leaving the bishop here, which allows us to blow up some more dynamite there, where we come in here with a check. They take there because the alternative actually isn't great, because you pop out here, you check with the knight, you take the bishop. King pops out here, you check with the knight anyway. You take with the queen here. You can also take with the knight if circumstances are call for it. This is it's a smorgasbord. If you can take with the queen, I would say get her into the mix. But sometimes you will have to take with the knight. That's fine though. They bring out their knight, and then it's checkmate just like that. You've got the knight covering here and here, and you've got the queen covering here. This one they probably fall into a little bit less as you rise up the rating rankings. What happens is once you bring your bishop out here, they bring their pawn out here, but that's fine. Don't panic. All you want to do is you want to get castled. And again, let's just see. I'll just show you the basic setup of this trap, or this trick, this opening at this stage. We'll bring our bishop here just to defend this, because sometimes you can get a little hairy where you have the queen taken here, dropping in a check on the king, which is really annoying. But largely you're just kind of looking to get your pieces in these sorts of positions. So you're actually going to drop your bishop back here if they do block that in. That's just a continuation if they don't fall into the trap, and how they don't fall into it is just a very simple e6. So don't panic if that happens. No, you don't get to explode the dynamite, but you still get to have a really fun game with some lovely rangy bishops. Queen can come over here, a real nice kingside attack. That is the repetoire gambit. That's a classic one I've covered on the channel in detail, but yes, still working at the 2000 elo level, so highly recommend booking up on that. It's just a super fun way to play against the Caro-kann. And our final trap comes from our beloved Vienna Gambit. So the Vienna Gambit is as follows, where we have our two knights out here like this, our pawns are meeting in the center like this, and we play our f pawn like this. And what I love about this trap is it's so easy for someone to fall into this if they don't know the Vienna Gambit, because to accept this gambit is a mistake. It's kind of falling into that trap. and we get to push our pawn here and bully this knight back. Now, it's not a huge like computer advantage, but I find playing this when you have this position, the knight drops back, you're able to bring your other knight out here because you do want to defend against this check, particularly with the pawn here. But you can bring your knight out here, and then you can just start to push this pawn. You get your bishop in the mix. Sometimes they'll waste time, like I think they do in this game. They waste time defending that pawn. So we can just start to get our pieces out into lovely little squares. And again, if we look at, say, the position 10 moves, 12 moves into the game, here we got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces in the game. They've got 1 piece in the game. We spend a little more time getting castled, and I managed to mess up this game after this point here, but we are down a pawn, so it's generous maybe to call it a trap, but I really do feel like once they take that pawn in this opening position, just jumping back here, bang, once they take that pawn and you push your pawn, whenever that happens, I'm thinking I'm going to win this game. Immediately I'm thinking I'm going to win this game. I'm going to get this pawn here, I'm going to get this knight here, I'm going to get this bishop here. Maybe we'll take this pawn back, maybe we won't, but we'll find a home for this bishop, maybe even here. And we're just going to have a real whale of a time. So a little bit of a trap, and again, it's maybe generous to call it a trap. That's why we've left it for last. Save the worst for last. But I really do recommend it because you do get into these really fun positions. Same with the one with the Caro-kann Gambit, the Rasa Studio Gambit. Even if they don't fall into it, you get these really fun positions. So those are 3 traps that still hold up, still hold water, and don't leave you high and dry if your opponent doesn't fall into it, even at the 2000 ELO rating range. That is going to be all from me today, folks. If you had a good time or you learned something, feel free to subscribe and stick around for more chess content. And as always, enjoy your chess. Thanks.